Hey everybody, welcome back to Lettermen Row, this time coming to you from Jacksonville, Florida. We've got more palm trees. It's been a December and January of tropical locations, a little bit nicer day and a little bit better news for Ohio State here in Jacksonville, Florida than in Phoenix, Arizona. That's Spencer Holbrook. I'm Austin Ward. Just finished up with Shaun Wade and his decision. So we've got a little rapid reaction brought to you by Byers Auto. Shaun Wade is coming back, the redshirt sophomore defensive back, now going to be a primary cornerback for Ohio State next year. Made his decision. He had a chance to go pro. Several mock drafts had him in the first round, got some feedback. He was iffy about it, decided to take his chances, come back next year, boost that stock, and compete for a national championship with the Buckeyes. And Spencer, this is a huge deal.
Yeah, and he seemed pretty confident with the decision. I was a little surprised. Some of these guys, they're on the fence, and maybe they want to go to the NFL, but they didn't hear what they wanted to. He seemed rather confident in the decision to come back. He knows what's at stake next year. He knows he has a chance to be an All-American, win a national title. This is huge for Ohio State. I don't think we can talk about it enough to say how big this is for the Buckeyes. To add a piece that's so versatile in this defense, can play a pseudo linebacker spot, can blitz the passer, can play in coverage and do whatever you need him to on the back end. It's huge for Ohio State moving forward.
I think he knows that sometimes he's going to need to play in the nickel. Sometimes he's going to have to help against the run. He's going to keep blitzing. He did that very effectively last season. Got that targeting call in the Fiesta Bowl when he was doing that, but that play notwithstanding, he can do so many different things. Ohio State's going to have to keep using him in a variety of different ways, but what he wants to do and what the Buckeyes will need him to do, when you look at this depth chart moving forward, he gets to be the outside corner. He gets to put that on film. He gets to show that to NFL scouts. And the Buckeyes, when you look at that depth chart, there's no Jeff Okudah, there's no Damon Arnett. Shaun Wade needs to be the superstar.
Well, he was a 5-star prospect coming out of high school, so it's almost like Ryan Day recruited a 2025 star that gets 1 year of eligibility. It's like going in the transfer portal almost.
Yeah, he's not going to get two.
You get 1 year with this 5-star prospect who you already know his skill set. You already know what he can do. Now he has to add a new layer to that. Can he add that layer of outside corner dominance that Jeff Okudah and David Arnett had this year? That remains to be seen, but for this move, I mean, again, I'm just going to keep saying it. We cannot stress how big this is for Ohio State. Just to gain a presence in the secondary that is known. It's one that can change games. Shaun can come from anywhere. I just think this is... If you had Cam Brown and Seven Banks both playing outside next year, it might be a little shaky. No offense to them, but they're first-time starters. You bring Shaun Wade back, and then you can rotate those two at the beginning of the year or whatever the presumable secondary coach wants to do. That is just huge.
Well, it's most likely going to be Kerry Combs, and he does have experience not only with Shaun Wade, but also having to reload after having a bunch of guys leave early for the draft. Jordan Fuller is out of eligibility, Damon Arnett is out of eligibility, and Jeff Okudah was never going to come back. But this is going to be, if it is Kerry Combs after the Tennessee Titans finish their season, we'll see what happens there, but there is an expectation that it will be. This is an important building block for him, because like you said, Cam Brown has got some experience, has got those reps under his belt. Seven Banks has been in some big games and had to play some meaningful snaps. Amir Reep has been on the field. You've talked about him before. Jocelyn Went, a bunch of other guys, and then Josh Proctor, the shoes he has to fill there for Jordan Fuller at safety. Like, one way or another, there were going to be a bunch of new faces. The fact that you have one who's going to be a Thorpe Award candidate, an All-American candidate, a potential first-round pick, the reason that we're talking about it, the reason we're even in Jacksonville, Florida, is because this guy is such a huge piece of what Ohio State can do. The front seven is going to be really good. There were going to be questions about the secondary. Now a huge one has been answered.
Well, you already knew the guys that were leaving. You knew Chase Young was gone. You knew Jeff Okudah was gone. Now you got Baron Browning back. Now you got Shaun Wade back. This defense is set to not rebuild, not reload, but I just think reset a little. You got Josh Proctor, who seems to be more of a ball hawk than he is a run stopper. Mm-hmm. Jordan Fuller was the eraser. I tend to feel like Shaun Wade's going to have to play a little bit of that eraser role. He's too good of a tackler in the open field not to do that.
Yeah.
I'm really interested to see what, I guess, Kerry Combs, if that's the lead we're taking, and I think that is the proper lead to take. I'm interested to see what he does with this, but we also have to give Kerry Combs some credit because this is not going to be his first time rebuilding an Ohio State secondary after a bunch of losses. He's done this before. He knows what it's like. Ryan Day's never done it before, but also that's why he's going to give the keys to a guy like Kerry Combs who knows exactly what to do to retool the secondary to keep it to a standard that Ohio State needs.
And you named a bunch of those guys there. Like, Chase Young wasn't going to come back. Okudah wasn't going to come back, but Baron Browning is returning. You talked to Wyatt Davis and Josh Myers last week in Arizona. Those are two immense pieces on the offensive line. Both of those guys were in similar positions as Wade, where they could have gone and probably been late first, second round pick. It's so hard to project that accurately because you don't know exactly what NFL teams need 1 through 32, and they're not just working off of a checklist of the mock drafts that are out there. It can get pretty hairy once you're actually in that situation. But those guys returning, obviously you know what you have in Justin Fields. You have that extremely talented wide receiver group coming in, and Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave back, among a couple others. I think part of the appeal here for Shaun Wade, Baron Browning, anybody else that was thinking about a decision, this is still a very talented team that's coming back for Ohio State. And as you head towards January 20th, when those decisions have to be finalized, I think Ohio State is coming out of this about as well as you possibly could.
Yeah, and one thing I think we need to remember about the NFL draft and these guys who are borderline first-round picks, like the Dolphins have 3 first-round picks. So if the Dolphins don't need an interior lineman or a safety,
yeah.
Those guys there's already one team with 3 of the first-round picks.
Right.
That's gone.
Yeah.
So these guys have to make a decision, not just on their, if they're going to come back to Ohio State, but if they're going to be borderline first-round picks and these teams don't have needs for them, come back to school. The draft resets after a year.
Yeah.
So I think that's interesting. But like you said, Ohio State has so much talent. This offense is going to be loaded next year. Replacing J.K. Dobbins isn't going to be easy. He's one of the best backs that's ever come through Columbus. But, the guys that they have there to replace him seem to be on the right track. Some of those guys, that's yet to be seen with Master Teague. He kind of struggled down the stretch. But I just think this defense, Ohio State loses so much on defense every year. It seems like last year was an exception because they were just historically bad, but the same guys came back and were historically good. So this defense is going to, like I keep saying, retool. It's never going to be a rebuild. I don't even consider it a reload. It's just, what do we have in place? How can we tool with it and just retool it to make it the best that it can be with the silver bullets?
That's a great point because, Shaun Wade wants to play on the outside, wants to prove himself there, and Ohio State will give him that opportunity, and they'll need him to do that. I said that already on Rapid Reaction, brought to you by Byers Auto, but the same sort of situation arises with Baron Browning. He's talked throughout his career. Is he more comfortable at middle? Is he more comfortable as an outside linebacker? Could he rush the passer? Yeah. Well, he can do all of those things. I don't know that pinning him into one position is the best thing for Ohio State's defense because you hear that phrase multiple all the time and variable looks. Well, Baron Browning lets you do that. Shaun Wade lets you do that. It was a big part of the reason they were able to do as much creatively as they did a year ago. That has to still be part of it for Shaun Wade, for Ohio State, for Greg Madison and that staff. But you have to find that balance too because, Jeff Okudah will move around occasionally. He lined up against tight ends and in the slot. Shaun Wade is going to have to be that key puzzle piece. He'll get his reps. He'll get to go one-on-one against the best receivers in the Big Ten and around the country. That matchup against Oregon in Week 2 will be a showcase for him. But there's also going to be times where you want him coming off the edge, lining up in the slot, blitzing the quarterback, and not getting an erroneous or questionable targeting call and getting ejected from the game. You still have to have him do that.
It's super interesting to me to see what Greg Madison does with this defense because when he was at Michigan and they had the Viper, I think it was the Viper, when Jabril Peppers was there, he was a safety that played bullet, that played their Viper.
Yeah.
Then you had a guy like Chase Winovich who played linebacker, defensive line combo, and I considered to be kind of like a Viper player.
Yeah.
Now you had Shaun Wade as like a safety that played bullet, and now you have Baron Browning coming back who can play a linebacker-style bullet, put him in the box more than he does play safety. The bullet position is so...
It's versatile. Yep.
It's so versatile, but it's also so questionable as to, does it even exist? Yes, it exists, but this year they used it as a nickel corner. Next year they might use it as a stand-up defensive end who can rush the passer but also drop into coverage. Baron Browning can do so much, and the addition of those two guys makes more of an impact on this defense than I think we could ever put into words.
I think maybe we made a mistake last offseason in talking about the bullet and assuming that one guy was going to play it all the time.
I agree.
And it was the same thing that when you talk about the H-back. It doesn't have to always be the same body type. It doesn't have to be, we talked about Brendan White or Shaun Wade or Baron Browning or Pete Warner. It doesn't have to be one guy. It depends on the personnel and the matchups. And what Ohio State has here now are two really important pieces in these two guys. There are others that can do it and will do it for Ohio State. But when you're talking about making your best fit on the chessboard, these two guys are difference makers.
Yeah, and you kind of said it the best because it is kind of comparable to the H-back. KJ Hill was the perfect H-back in the Urban Meyer system. Well, in Ryan Day's system, to be honest, Chris Olave played some H-back when he would go in motion and catch touchdowns on the post routes. So, I mean, like, the H-back is so versatile.
Yeah.
Same thing can be said about the bullet. You don't ever see the bullet on the field because they disguise it as just, hey, this is a safety, hey, this is a linebacker, but it's there. And these two guys, if they're both on the field, it's going to be interesting because they can't both play that bullet role. But if you can find a way to just keep them cohesive on the field together, your defense is going to be really hard to beat because it's going to be so athletic and so versatile.
Yeah, 9 months now for Ohio State to get to work, finding the right way to use all these pieces. The roster starting to come together. They had the early signing period. Now we're working through for Ohio State the draft decisions, and they got a huge one here in Jacksonville, Florida. Spencer and I were so glad to have a chance, the Wade family inviting us in to cover that for Lettermen Row. Hope you enjoyed that coverage. Hope you enjoyed some of this analysis here. We're getting ready to head back to Columbus, Ohio. Get ready for an interesting offseason, and the coaching moves and everything falls into place to get ready for 2020. He's Spencer Holbrook. I'm Austin Ward. This has been Rapid Reaction, brought to you by Byers Auto. We'll see you right back in the great state of Ohio.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe below to get the latest videos from Lettermen Row.
We got Letterman Live. We've got the practice report. We got Rapid Reaction. Hey, and you know we got Buckeye IQ with Zach Bourne.
For sure. We got recruiting breakdowns with Berm. We got whatever you need. Ohio State football and Ohio State athletics, we've got you covered here at Lettermen Row.